go ahead and call this meeting to order, please. Our first item on tonight's agenda is public input, and I don't see anyone here to give us public input.
No, we didn't receive anything online.
Perfect. Has everybody had a minute to review the meeting minutes from the 26th? All right, I'll take a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September 26, 2022.
Second.
All righty, so we are now going to go to the meat of our
We
meeting.
need a vote, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A motion and a second to approve.
Motion, please, who wants to approve the minutes?
Raise your hand.
Very good. Anybody want to not approve it? All right. So, to the meat of the issue, subcommittee reports. The first one is the charter, and that was the two of us. And we still believe that the council should not have the right to limit the scope of what the charter review would like to look at. So do we want to make a motion to accept that and then vote on it? Kind of what's the process here, Laura?
So tonight, there's no action, so it would be consensus from the group that this is what you would present to your public meeting or any conversation, discussion about them.
Okay. So do we have a consensus that this is how we would want to move forward with the council and the Charter Review Commission limiting the scope or not limiting, making the council not able to limit the scope of what the Charter Review looks at? Yes?
Yes.
All righty, so we have a consensus on that. The next one we have up is city council, and that's the vacancies and attendance, right?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah. So I think everybody has a document tonight. It's a one-pager. It's got some red font on it. What I did here is I just laid out, and cameras looked at this as well, the existing language, the issue, and then the proposed change, which really is fairly simple. We're adding, we're adding the special meetings to the counts, for absences. And I did have a question there that I think Laura might have answered, that how do you, and maybe this is for legal, how do you determine, or how are the absences excused? What's the process, or is there a process, or is it just taken up if they hit the threshold of 3 or 6 absences, depending on what we go?
My response was typically excused absences are those notification ahead of time or in case of emergency immediately thereafter. So your unexcused would be a no-show.
Without prior notification. Generally, if an absence is determined to be excused or inexcused when there's been at least 3, and there are proceedings pending that declare the seat vacant. You understand what I'm saying?
He was trying to clarify what makes an excused absence.
So if Brian decides he wants to miss the next council meeting, he notifies whom?
Well, he would notify the mayor, the town city secretary, or the city, he'd notify somebody.
Right.
And generally, if a brief announcement is made at the beginning of the meeting, where it's talked about here in the conference room as a meeting at the beginning. So-and-so won't be here tonight because he or she is whatever. That is not, that doesn't of itself make it an excused absence. I mean, the council member so-and-so wasn't here tonight because he just didn't feel like coming down here. That's not a good excuse, and so technically, you know, to be perfectly and completely efficient, there needs to be some kind of an announcement, a motion, and a second vote to determine the absence to be excused. That never, ever happens. When it does happen, the only time it ever does happen is when there is some proceeding by the council pending to declare the seat vacant. These 3 absences on such and such dates were unexcused. Were they unexcused? I move that they be regarded as excused absences, even if it's an after the fact notice.
Okay.
That's when it happens.
So you deal with it more
In the worst case, I only deal with it in the worst case scenario.
So there's no criteria, there's no, these are excused absences, these are unexcused.
Some city charter provisions I have seen in the past try to they make an attempt to determine that something is or isn't. But how do you, you know, if you're on vacation, that's generally an excused absence. But if you're on vacation every other month for 30 days at a time, it's hard to say that's excused. So you can put provisions or terms in there like that, but, you know, for what they're worth, you know, an illness, okay. You know, they just didn't feel good.
So whose discretion is that?
It's the council's discretion to determine.
Okay.
Just happened to see this.
Yeah, this is in our ordinances.
This is another one that says,
There was a, actually,
it says that section 2-465, Code of Ordinances, attendance of all meetings applies to, it's a part of this section that applies to all city officials, which includes council as well as any boards, commissions, senior officers, senior.
this is our code of ethics.
And so attendance of all officers at meetings of their respective office shall be mandatory unless excused. In order for an absence to be considered excused, an officer shall be responsible for notifying the mayor or chairperson in the event of an absence prior to the meeting. The officer notifies the mayor, mayor pro tem, deputy mayor pro tem, or chairperson in any other manner or after the absence, the validity of the excuse shall be decided by the membership of the council or board. A partial absence and a complete absence shall be considered the same. The officers may compel attendance of their members at all of their respective meetings.
Okay, so that's laid out in the ordinance. Awesome.
Is that a matter of business then for a meeting, or is it just, I guess I'm trying to, it sounds like we have it laid out in the ordinance, as long as a councilman or woman.
What I see is it has in there how you decide whether an absence is excused or not.
Yeah.
So then the other question that we're looking at is, you know, what having unexcused absences then implies. And I don't know the process of doing, it's better if you have to, it started at 3, the council can take action, 7, I think, automatic.
Well, it's
Some of
6
them are automatic, yes.
consecutive, I think there's an automatic forfeiture. is what I'm-
Yes, after 6.
But if you have 3 without excuse, then the council, as a majority, can decide.
But then that would have to be the joint action, right?
It becomes really ugly, but it needs to be, yes, it does need to be an agenda item. Although a lot of charters say that it's an automatic forfeiture, if the council does absolutely nothing after, let's say, 3 consecutive regular meetings, or 6 consecutive regular meetings, for whatever reason, it says shall be deemed to have forfeited, but it's not automatic. There still needs to be some kind of formal action taken to declare the seat to be vacant. And then a discussion or something has to be done to fill the vacancy. But even though it suggests that it's automatic, it's really kind of not. Especially when you have the excused language in there, because if no formal action is taken to declare the seats to be vacant, then a judge or a jury would presume that the council had excused those prior absences. Does that make sense? So,
I didn't want to make this change without an understanding of how, I proposed the change, without an understanding of how we track or manage and who has the authority to excuse it. It sounds like it's the council, and by being silent, maybe it's approved.
that's what happened.
Okay. So we're proposing to add and/or, and maybe this is illegal, can we do an and/or special meetings? Or is there a legal way to, anyhow,
I
so.
don't know what that means. I use it all the
Okay.
time. I use it all the
Okay.
time. I don't know what it means.
Okay. So we may need to work through that, but we would recommend adding the special to the counts. That's our recommendation.
Does anybody have any comments on that?
It needs to be ordered.
Just order.
You need to change it, remember?
I guess the board.
Consecutive meetings, regular, special.
You could do it, but if you do it this way, just say or, don't get down 3 consecutive regular or special meetings. Now, wait a minute.
That imply it has to be three regular or three special.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the intent here is 3 consecutive meetings regardless of whether they're regular or special.
Right,
That's what I said,
right.
yeah.
That's right, and or.
Yeah, so
I think you said it, though, regardless of whether you're regular or special.
3 consecutive meetings of the council regardless of whether
We just take
regular.
out the word regular.
Recommend special for them. Just meetings, is that,
Oh,
3
yeah.
consecutive meetings of the city council. We don't have any meetings that are anything other than regular or special.
How about,
Although we post possible form agendas for social events.
Yeah, that approves.
that's not a,
Town hall meetings, by posting this, even by posting some type of a possible form agenda, that suggests that there's some kind of meeting. So, and in fact, it's not,
it's
so.
a gathering, it's not technically a meeting.
Well, posting it, it's a meeting. If you think it might, so, yeah, look, keeping the words regular and special in there. So we'll work, we can kick out language and work with it later. But I got the intent, and so, yeah, you can propose that.
Okay, Lee, thoughts? I'm sorry. Vicki, thank you, I'm sorry. Vicki? Thoughts? Okay, I don't disagree with it. It means that's a double negative, so, okay. Okay.
Have a question.
Sure.
City council meets every week?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Okay, so suppose someone is ill, maybe they have to have surgery and they miss 3. Okay, so that automatically,
Happened in another city that I have 2 months ago, last minute had a heart attack. They excused his absences.
okay.
He's
So
still
it
on
would
council.
be on an individual basis, something like that?
If they don't take formal action to declare the seat vacant, then you can assume, a court would presume that the council had, by implication, excused the absence. That makes sense? So, I mean, technically they could, a heart attack isn't a good enough excuse. We have, you have 2 regular meetings a month, and then the council can schedule as many special meetings as they want. So if they wanted to get, if somebody did have a heart attack, Brian, the council could schedule 4 meetings in 1 week, in addition to the regular 2 meetings.
Let me ask you this, so the language I have now says, an officer shall be responsible for notifying, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, but
Does that imply that the officer has to do notification, or does someone else do notification on the officer's behalf?
It doesn't matter who provides notice, but you're reading from the code.
That's important, so it's like the heart attack case, the spouse or someone else can provide notification, that's the clear.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Who could complain about that? That's a hyper-technical, I mean, we would lose if we argued, well, his wife told us, but he didn't because he was in a coma. And understand that, that mechanical process is helpful, but for charter provisions, it's not determinative. What you're reading from there is code of ethics. And it doesn't say that these provisions shall apply to the declaration of absences by council members who miss meetings. You understand what I'm saying? That simply applies to ethical provisions, not ethical violations. But we can, we could adopt a rule, doesn't need to be by charter, but a rule that references the mechanics for reporting or excusing absences by looking at code ethics.
And that would be updated with the code of, rules of procedure.
Yeah. Well, actually, that would be the way to do it. It would be bootstrapped into the rules of procedure. Council, that's what it would. Not in the charter, we don't want that in the charter, because if we change the numbers of these sections, then we have to amend the charter, and that's way too long to do that. Oh, does that make sense?
Okay, so it sounds like we are all in agreement that we want to change it to regular or special meetings. Yes? Any dissent? All right, so now we're going to go to the 3.14,
Yeah.
which is changing it from 4, it would be the mayor, the city manager, or 3 council members instead of 4, so they don't have a quorum. Mike, any further comment, you want?
Well, we have this in compliance with the open meeting act.
I agree. All righty, Lee, Vicki, anybody? No. Okay, so we're in consensus with that as well. All righty, so now we're to the other municipal judge and court clerk. So Vicki, Lee, are you guys ready to let us know what you think?
Yeah, I think so. I handed out, I didn't have it ready, well, it was ready, but I didn't, so I handed out kind of 2 options on the proposal. Looking back at the current charter language and what's in our, what's in Texas code, what we would like to do is also utilize what we found is best practices in other cities of our similar makeup. And the 2 options are to be able to remove the judge and or associate judges during the term of office by majority vote of all members of the city council eligible to serve, something along those lines. Now, I think in some cases it currently says it has to be passed by, in some instances, by 4. I'd rather say majority, because at some point it may be a different number. So I'd rather say majority rather than a specific number. And the other option that I put on here also was for cause. Now, in the Texas code, it doesn't, in some cases it says for malfeasance, or misconduct, or DUI. I mean, it's, pretty specific. And then in some of the cities, it even goes further than that. But the majority, interestingly enough, the majority of the cities have cause or with cause or without cause. And sort of trying to cover all of it. I think that's what they're doing. They're leaving it open. So if you think it's a cause for removal, then it would fit. So the other additional proposal that we talked about was changing it from 2 years to 4 years. We think 2 years should remain. And also, I think there was some note about changing appointed by the city council, and it needs to be by the city. So no change there. We also found one subscript or identification, something on in the charter, and I think that we're still discussing that.
Yeah, no, it's been refined. The footnote is, the reference in the footnote itself is incorrect.
That's what I thought. So,
Yeah.
do we have to do
No.
anything? Okay, can we just change it? Fix it?
It's a scrivener's error. It can be fixed administratively.
Okay, good, okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, so you guys, and you can vote on it if you want to, if you don't have to. Just tell everyone that needs to get done.
You know, the interesting thing is, I didn't see in our charter very many representations of how it feeds back. There's no Texas code notations at the end of some of those.
That's true.
So
Yes, I think it's wonderful as a lawyer.
I'm wondering if they should be there, we should be consistent.
All right, so the problem with, it's helpful for reference purposes,
Right.
it truly is. But when the statutes change, when the numbering sequence in Texas law changes, that would require some type of charter amendment. There's scrivener's error operationally or some discussion and vote. It's just kind of difficult, you know. When you say in accordance with state law, most lawyers would be able to locate it pretty quickly. A
Right.
person would have a hard time, I agree.
Yeah.
But if you reference a specific statutory provision, and even the Open Meetings Act used to be 1269 and Vernon is annotated civil statutes, and all of a sudden one day, one day it's that, and the next day it's
Something else.
the Texas Government Code, chapter 551. So it kind of, the change would have to be cascaded.
Do we have, I noticed in a lot of the cities, when I was looking at their charters and ordinances, they have a cross-reference.
Sure.
And do we have one? I didn't see.
Our ordinances have probably cross-reference.
I mean, they cross-reference in the ordinance to the charter, or to the basic code. They have, I've seen them all in the other cities. Do we have that? When I looked, I didn't.
No, generally, we have some footnotes that are clearly wrong. But sure, our ordinances have cross-references, but that's really, that doesn't change the substance of the language of the charter provisions. It
Right.
doesn't have any effect on the meaning. So, but it's really helpful. That's an operational thing.
That's
that-
just a question.
No, it's an operational thing that can be done.
So you're talking about adding a chart that
Yeah.
references sections from. the
Yeah,
chart
yeah.
to
Yeah, they'll have
sections
like a
of
column that says Texas code and then a column that says city charter, and it has like the article.
When
and
can you
it's-
have that done?
No, but a lot of cities have it.
Sure they do. It's because their charter is codified through a codification service.
Yeah.
Codification companies, we use Unicode.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Unicode and Franklin are two leading codifying companies that are out there.
We have them link the charter PDF, but they no longer codify the charter.
Yeah, they don't do the charter process anymore.
Okay, I was just curious. So the two proposals then that we have is one, to specifically change it to majority vote by the council. That's not an option. That's what I think it should be, along, if that's what y'all agree. And, but the other, it's a kind of up in the air, is should it be for cause, with or without cause, or should it be specific to the type of,
At will is the other choice. At
At
will or for cause.
Yeah,
That's the other choice. At will is for any reason or no reason.
cause or without, it said, most of them say with or without cause.
Yeah.
What does that do for city if they are in dismissal as being challenged?
We would need to establish that determination if we have a for-cause standard and not an at-will standard in our charter. At-will is not the cause. If we have a for-cause standard, then we would need to establish what's called the substantial evidence rule, that there was at least substantial evidence to establish that the reason for termination was justified because it was for cause. When you're in litigation, things get really, when we're talking about it here, when the council's deliberating in executive session, it's really clear, but when you're in court, maybe not so much. You
Well,
understand what I'm saying?
even if you were very specific and said because you're malfeasance, you still have to do that same thing. It's the same thing, right?
Yep. Well, for cause would encompass, malfeasance,
Malfeasance,
intoxication,
yeah, everything.
felony conviction, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
A termination in an at-will context is much easier. It is from a legal perspective, from the city attorney's perspective, it's safer for us because if we terminate somebody, and if we say these are the reasons why, and we're required to give them a name clear here and all that kind of stuff, and a judge or a jury thinks, well, those reasons weren't good enough.
Yeah.
If we have an at-will standard in there, then we can't get sued. Well, we can get sued, but would likely win that case. If we have a for-cause standard, I mean, that is rich grounds for litigation. For-cause standards for termination exist in the state civil service system and in some cities' personnel policies, personnel manuals. And when an employee is separated from employment, it has to be for cause. And that whether the cause is justifiable or not is the big issue. It's further grounds for litigation. It just says, with or without cause, it's for cause or at will. From a legal perspective, we're safer. That's not from an operational or political perspective, mind you, just from a legal perspective. I like the latitude and the discretion and the authority that it gives us, and the freedom from the specter of litigation down the road. But it does give the council, any 4 members of the council can get together during a meeting and say, let's fire that person. I move.
With or without cause, there's always cause. That's why you're terminating. Without cause means we don't want to say why.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's really all it is. And if you're firing a judge, if you're putting all this in place to fire a judge because they've done something wrong, then it should be the cause.
So you're saying,
You should be
with
willing
or
to
without
stay.
cause, you're saying say the whole thing, with or without cause.
I've said for cause.
With
For
cause.
For cause. That's what
I mean, you have to-
I don't like this anyhow. If we're gonna, if
I like
that's
this
the
with or
consensus that we're
without,
gonna do this,
fire
then we should do it.
cause, but you're still protected, the city's still protected.
Her point is though, if you are getting rid of anybody, period,
It should be
it's gonna be
It should
for
be
a
for-
cause, so tell them what the cause is.
Yeah.
I just read fertile ground for litigation as full employment for lawyers.
I'm not complaining about it.
But if you have
I
actual
want to retire one
cause,
day.
it's very difficult to look at.
sorry?
I like it, I do.
So what?
And blue is so much easier
But the
because.
question is not whether it's easy. The question is whether it is,
There should be a standard. You
yes.
shouldn't be able to, like you said, just for people decide suddenly one week, we don't like this judge. We're
Well,
gonna
let me
get
ask
rid of
you,
the judge.
so the city can fire the city manager at will,
Yep.
the chief of police?
The city manager can fire chief of police, so not council.
Not the council.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand why the judge would be treated differently. I mean,
Because
they're
they're
an
the
employee
judge.
of the city, and if the majority of the council can appoint them, I think they should be able to fire on that will. They're considered an employee under the federal labor laws, right? Which is what your at-will, Texas is at an at-will stage,
Right, well, yeah.
so I don't know why we sliced them and give them special privileges to have the ability to, we gotta take them to court. They can always sue for,
We treat judges differently.
yeah,
It's
Somewhat
always.
of a time.
but I'd like to understand why.
Pardon?
It is somewhat of a time.
And then you're kind of
Yeah.
insulating that from the damning
You have a
nonsense
two-year
that
term.
happens, the political nonsense.
Yeah.
At the end of that 2
You
years,
have a-
that same majority of council.
Council's nonpartisan, they will something. You have a Republican council come in and fire the Democratic judge. Or you have a Democratic council come in and fire a Republican judge. You're trying to avoid all of that. And that's why judges are insulated in that way.
Well,
With
that's
that,
a
just
question of, for me, it's a question of corruption. How can the residents, the citizens of the city have confidence in the judicial system? I think that that's really important. So if 4 members of council just get together and say, well, I don't like this judge because they're, handing out, no fines, or they're handing out this, or they're handing out that, then to me, that seems very open for corruption.
Well, I'm not trying so hard to be good tonight. I ain't trying.
That's all I need.
I just think that there's that difference where a judge, you go vote in a judge. And then you have the judge that's appointed by the city council, not so much a city manager, I learned that. It's, the state law in Texas protects these judges. And so, if you fire them at will, I like it at will, because then he or she has to prove why they were fired, and they have all of this litigation from local to the state to fight the firing. And it is exhaustive, correct?
Yes, it is.
And so, I like firing somebody at will, a judge.
Couple of things.
David, what do you
Yeah,
think?
a couple of things I want to throw out there too. Right now, our judge is an employee, haven't always been that way, may not always be that way. Well, actually, because of IRS requirements, we regard them as employees, but they may not always be full-time employees. The employment at will rule in Texas is in fact the law in Texas, but when you're talking about municipal employees, it's an illusion. It's an urban myth. There are very few categories of personnel in cities that are truly at will. In other words, in order to be an at-will employee, there has to be an employment manual that says so, right? But you also have to be a young, white, healthy male, and you can't be a member of any protected class. And you can't be a whistleblower. So the employment at-will rule in Texas is that's the law. But when people tell you that, that's how it works in Texas, that's not how it really works in Texas. Right? So, I mean, the lawsuits that we've had, the personnel-related litigation that we've had over the past 10, 15 years, alleging wrongful termination, that our insurance carrier settled for monies that just made me angry because it was unjustified and unwarranted. All of those cases were based on wrongful termination in an employment at will context. So even if the charter says at will, there is still a pretty good possibility that if they terminate a municipal judge and that employment relationship midterm before the term is up, there's no guarantee that we won't get sued.
Well, there's no guarantee we're not gonna get sued no matter what we do.
Yes, that's true. I just.
And I don't think we can litigate, we can write this so that we think we're never gonna get sued.
We
That's
can't.
not the purpose.
Yeah, good point. Yes, I agree. So if it says that will, with or without cause, that doesn't mean that we're going to be willy-nilly about it and we'll have a surprise meeting with 4 council members and everybody votes in favor of termination kind of thing. That would be incredibly unusual, highly unlikely.
What's the process?
Oh, go ahead.
It seems like we'd be more likely sued if you just put with or without cause. If you just say a cause,
We say with cause, then it's much more likely that we'll get sued. We have to prove
You
that.
have to prove the
We have
cause.
to prove the reasons why, and it has to be sufficient. Yeah, to a judge or a judge.
And if you're gonna fire a judge, you should probably be able to prove that.
Yes.
That's a political reason, it's a good reason,
Yeah.
absolutely it is.
So the question really though becomes one of timing. If it's without cause then, is it at the time when council recognizes they no longer want this judge, or do they not renew at the end of the year? So the same effect can happen, it's just a matter of timing without cause.
Vicki, what are your thoughts on the at will or for cause?
I think it ought to be more cause.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about this?
Not that particular item, but there was also some discussion about, again, revisiting for whether or not we had 4 positive votes against, for taking out a judge or whatever. Another option was brought up that you had to have a total, all of them, like you do in a criminal
Okay.
case.
I was just gonna say a supermajority.
Yeah, and I do not agree with that. I think it needs to be a majority of the council, but not a specific number. Majority of selected, or, you know, those council people that are serving.
All right. Any other thoughts you want to add? I'm just kind of doing a little,
No, I think cause, for cause, or for with or without cause. I think it ought to be both ways. I don't think we need to worry about what, well, we do need to worry, but we don't need to, focus totally on, are we gonna get sued over this or not? This is on, we don't know if this is ever gonna happen. We just need to put stuff in place that, the wording in place to help us if it ever does. And I don't think that this council or anyone else in the city would want to get rid of anybody just because they didn't like their personality. Well, no, maybe it is, but
You don't handle the point of cases.
no. And
So-
that's why I am not an attorney.
so right now I have Lee and Vicki both saying that their preference would be the wording with or without cause. Okay. Kelly?
I don't want to make any changes, but if we're going to make changes and that's going to be what we're going to suggest, I would say absolutely with cause. You should have cause if you're terminating the judge. And my note earlier was supermajority. It should be a supermajority, not just a regular.
What is a supermajority?
It's what, the 6 out of 7?
Depends on whatever fraction you come up with, but generally it's 5 or 6 out of 7. Usually 5.
Or is it not? It's 6.
That's-
Yeah, it's 6. Because we just did it, yeah.
Let's read about it for.
Okay, we're going to go around. Okay, so Kelly, you think it should be for cause, and you think that they should have to have a supermajority of the council. All righty.
At will with or without cause.
And a majority or a supermajority. All right.
Supermajority.
With or without cause.
With cause.
Only with cause. All right, so right.
At will, with or without cause, majority.
Amy?
With cause.
And do you think they should have to have a supermajority or a majority?
Majority.
Alrighty. But Jeff, do you want to add any thoughts?
Only that I would clarify with the group if you intend it to be a 2/3 majority or a 3/4 majority, because that does change that vote to be either 5 out of 7 or 6 out of 7. So if it's a 2/3 majority, there's some things have been, that's 5 council members, it's a 3/4 majority, it's 6, to David's point earlier. I think it's important to specify which you prefer when you say a supermajority, because either could be considered a supermajority, rather not complete the page.
I would say the 6, which would be the
3/4.
3/4. Yeah, which is what the zoning cases were. That's what I was wondering.
Okay. So, building a consensus, what I have here is, Brian, you want to say something? Deborah, anything you want to say?
Standing.
All right, Robert.
I was kind of inclined to go super majority, but I'm on the with or without cause side. I think it is an incredibly important decision to make, and it should be clear. And I like the idea of the protection that will provides to the city. But I think to say I've never met a council member who would not want to have cause to take an action like that. Like I say, to me, it's more a matter of timing. If there's not sufficient evidence for cause, then the majority of council can wait until the term is up and not forgive it. I have concerns about that, even though we went through these already, because we're now in the process of rebuilding the culture of our police and courts function, which is another challenge. So we're in a position to have to do that.
Okay, so that means the consensus is with or without cause, because Kelly is an alternate. My vote was for cause only. But we had 4 that thought with or without cause was the way to go. And let's see, oh, I'm missing somebody. Lee, what were you on, majority or supermajority?
I'm thinking
Okay,
majority.
just majority.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is with or without cause by the majority of the council. Okay, there we go. You got that, Laura? Thank you, ma'am. All righty, and then our final piece is the municipal court clerk.
Right now, we have a discrepancy between the charter and the code. The question was, should we amend the charter to agree with the code? And I think that's what we're proposing. Let's see. I sent you the proposed language. I didn't know you could print that. Is it in your spreadsheet? I sent it separately in a Word document. Oh, but actually it is. It's on the last page. So I can read.
Oh, look.
And it is on it. It's on the last page.
On the last tab, do you have where?
No, there's more tabs down there. There's lots of tabs. There's so many tabs. What is language? So many tabs.
So.
Yes. Goodness. And over here on the left, that's current language. The blue is the proposed language. And then the last box is for the rationale behind the change.
Oh,
I can't read it that far away. I try to read it here, but I don't know.
You do it just one more time.
I'll zoom into the proposed language. How about that?
That's the proposed language.
That's good.
The red is what will come out, the blue is what will go in, and the reasoning would be, the charter says that the municipal court judge appoints the clerk, the ordinance says city manager. We think it probably should be city manager, and so we'd like to change that, and eliminate conflict, and make sure that they are in agreement.
And just a reminder that that was changed,
Yes.
Proposition B.
Alrighty, so this was voted on at the last charter election, and it passed. So I am hesitant to overturn that.
Okay.
So, Lee, your thoughts?
Mine is, I was waiting to hear if the judge was going to be full-time or not, and he is going to be full-time, which means he should supervise those people. And we voted on that, and that's the way it should be. The judge.
Okay. Vicki?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think it ought to be the city manager. And I know it was voted on and it passed barely
That's
the last time. But in looking through all those other cities, there is not one single one that says anything other than city manager. Not one single one. That's what they all say.
They all say manager.
They all say
City
city manager.
Yeah, none of it's a judge. I was actually really surprised by that.
I was too.
Now, that was our former judge brought that to us.
Language in the existing charter.
What's the backstory on, so that was voted on last time?
Yeah.
To change from what to the judge?
City manager.
City
and
manager.
judge.
City manager to the judge, and now we're wanting to go back to city manager. Do we kind of look like we don't know what we're doing?
Yeah.
So anyhow, okay.
Looks like we're testing the waters and learning our experience.
Okay, at the last meeting, I brought this up. When this was voted on last year or whatever, people, myself included, we weren't informed ahead of time. We didn't even know what this meant or, what the back story was or anything. So I think a lot of people were just going in and voting yes.
Or no.
And I went in and I voted no on almost everything because I didn't know what they were trying to do. And so just because we voted on it a year ago doesn't mean that it may not have been the right timing. I just think we need to let the citizens know ahead of time and kind of maybe have some meetings, explain, like we're doing now. We're learning, at least this is a learning experience for me because I wasn't aware of this. So I think people would be more likely to vote in a positive way if they were informed. So I don't have a problem with putting it out there again.
Okay, awesome.
I gave that a lot of thought, and I did read up on it, didn't I, Jeff? I was adamant about how I wanted those court personnel to be treated. And the city manager is going to have an input anyway, with any city employee, I would think. And so I think, and the city manager doesn't want to appoint, I can tell you that. He doesn't really want to appoint, not this one anyway. I am saying the clerk of the municipal court should be supervised by the chief judge of the municipal court, deputy clerks, etc. And they are a city employee anyway. So I like to think that anybody that's going to be hired is going to be going through the process of HR, is going to be going through the process of whatever committee there is put together and does the interview. But I want, selfish, I want to know that whoever is there as the judge on a full-time basis is going to be able to supervise them.
Here's a very, very interesting question. So, David, under the current language in the charter, can the city manager fire the court clerk?
No. Nope. You could change, the council could change the budget, but understand, number one, that by state law, the judge in a court of record has the authority under the Texas Government Code to supervise clerical personnel. Here we're talking about, and regardless of what our charter says, that state law provision will supersede what our charter says regarding supervision. But when we're talking about the appointments of the clerk, the problem that we had was that one of the problems that we had, the most notable was our full-time presiding judge appointed a clerk. That clerk did not meet, there was an issue with regard to whether or not that person could be what's called CJIS certified. You have to be certified, you have to take training classes, you have to have a really clean record, because the court area, the municipal court area is an area that has access to highly confidential state and federal maintained criminal history databases. Because that's an area that has access to terminals, everybody that works there has to be, it's called CJIS certified. We had one clerk that was appointed by the judge that did not meet those qualifications. There was some issue with regard to that. And although it might have been able to have been corrected, the onboarding was deficient, and it wasn't, the hiring process was outside of the city's ordinary course of business. Because it was outside the ordinary course of business, it created it had the potential, and in fact, in one instance, did create issues. If it's the city manager, what that means is the city manager, by implication, city manager or designee. The way that it works in county and district courts, they're hired by the county, but the judges have influence over who works their courts, and that influence is, although it's not specified in a state law, it's a really practical exercise and a really practical authority that judges have. If the county assigns a clerk that they don't want, they're going to run them off until they get the right one. But they have clerks that follow them around. The district judge, for example, will have the same court administrator that they use when they were county court of law judge. That makes sense. So
Can I just ask, does the job description for the city clerk, the court clerk, that specifies they have to be certified in a certain amount of time, correct?
I haven't seen it directly, but I imagine so.
I think I went back and I checked it, because, I'm still wanting to protect those court clerks. I don't want somebody to work there 20 years or 15 years, and then the judge comes in and brings their own people. I like to think that they have some kind of protection, and so I want to know about the job description.
But again, as with any city employee, it's at will.
But I'm talking about certification. Do they have to be certified? You talk about certification.
CJIS certification is different, right? CJIS certification is you have to take a training course and pass a test, and you have to undergo a background examination that would enable you to have access to areas in which confidential data is accessible. There is also a separate clerk certification program that's offered through the state, TMCEC, where someone can be certified to different levels of being a court clerk.
Right,
Level 1 to level
1, 2,
4.
3, 4. I've got those.
Right. But the CJIS certification, if you can't pass the CJIS test, or if your background is not appropriate, you can't work at the court. I had an employee, saw a woman once who was a great employee, and when this thing first came out, these new requirements, and it was a long time ago, 10 years before she'd written a hot check. They had to fire her on the spot.
But to Lee's point, is achieving a CJIS certification with a certain period of time of being hired a requirement for keeping the job at this point?
Absolutely it is.
But is it written so that if someone doesn't,
I think it's in the
then
job description.
Even if it's not in the job
Okay.
description, if we have somebody who is not CJIS certified working in the court area, and that area has access to.
well, I'm looking for something more automatic, again, because of the problems we had, because you told me that the city manager cannot fire the clerk, given our current language. Only the judge can, and the judge is the one who chose someone who could not be CJIS certified, who was having challenges
Had a
in
challenge.
being CJIS certified.
Problems.
Yeah, probably.
I would like to see some process somewhere, because they can't do the job. They can't do the job.
All right, so if the charter says the city manager appoints and doesn't say anything about who gets to fire, that means the city manager gets to fire.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? The judge doesn't like that person, just like any other department director. The city manager generally delegates that authority to department directors to hire and fire personnel within their department. When they're doing it, they're actually technically doing it as a delegation of authority from the city manager.
But
Right.
our charter language now says that the clerk is appointed by the chief judge. That then implies in the same way the chief judge is the firing authority.
Yeah.
And does that also indicate that person did not go through the greater HR process?
All city employees would go through the
You
HR
have-
process. This was an after-the-fact background.
Yeah, the onboarding was short and sweet. For that, in that one specific instance, the onboarding of that specific employee was expedited. I don't want to give you the reasons why. There were, the question, yes.
I have a question.
I'm not sure if we talked about this last time or not, but is the judge an employee, or is he, like a judge could have their own private practice and go from court to court, or are they strictly restricted to Rowlett?
But whether they're a city employee or not doesn't mean that they can't be a municipal judge in other cities as well. And state law allows municipal judges to serve in multiple courts, but I think that our employment contract with our existing judges, I may be speaking out of hand, but I think that our existing contract contains an exclusivity provision, but we wouldn't enforce it. It may not contain an exclusivity provision. So I think the end of the question is, along with saying, our judge can probably serve as a municipal judge in other cities,
So,
so long as he's a full-time judge with us. You understand what I'm saying?
but if they sign a contract for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, the judge, if he's employed, is it a 2-year contract or
Yes.
3 year?
It's 2 years.
Okay, so
I believe that was one of the holdups, that why it took so long is there probably was some negotiations going on with this agreement. I don't know for sure. I don't know what the agreement says for Judge Kilgore.
Well, I don't think that necessarily
Well,
matters.
to
We're
Yeah.
talking
Yeah, I
about
know,
what this
I
is
know, I'm,
25 years from now.
yeah.
Yes, that's a good point.
I just want to say, all right. 2.03, clerk. The clerk of the municipal court should be, my opinion, supervised by the chief judge of the municipal court. And it should be, Lord,
So you want something that isn't up there,
I do.
okay? So it's not the end of the world. We can have lots of different opinions here.
Are we going to have more discussions on this, David, or is this going to be it tonight? Anybody?
We're going to have a public hearing, we're going to have something else after this to take public input. So my expectation is, depending on how you guys want to do it, my expectation is we'll take public input, you guys get feedback from other people.
Can you imagine what that's going to bring up? So,
what I was trying to say is, if this person is like for a 2-year period, I don't think they should be the one appointing the clerk. I think it should be the city manager, because every time you change a judge, if they leave after 2 years, then that means another judge can come in and fire or hire their own clerk, and so that clerk will be out without a job.
Excellent point.
Beyond that, I'm thinking that creates an opportunity for fairly inconsistent record keeping.
Yeah.
Because this is the chief record keeper for the courts,
Right.
the court record, yes.
I mean, I don't have a problem with like the city manager or his appointee shall appoint the clerk. And I don't have a problem with the judge supervising the clerk.
right.
Right.
The danger I think that David is bringing up is if you have a judge and a clerk that can't get along, and they are they're like this, right, when they're working.
And somebody said last time that they kind of go together. They kind of, when they leave and go somewhere, the clerk, I build a relationship.
Mediation practice, like she'll be working for him, I mean, they go together.
Right, and I kind of get that. I mean, you want your best person doing the job, so, and didn't you say your research showed that most cities have the chief judge appoint?
No, most cities have city manager.
City manager,
Yeah.
okay, I got that wrong.
I was on the last commission that actually made this change. It was presented to us by the judge. It made sense. I don't know that we looked at what the other cities had done.
Do you know what the
I
argument
don't
for that
think we
was?
have
I don't
any of
think
that.
we-
Yeah. And if we had, I mean, it's overwhelming, there's no other option other than the city manager. If they have it in there, it's the city manager. And so,
And you didn't see anything that deviated, like both the city manager and the judge?
it's all city manager.
It's all city manager.
And there's, and everybody's codes and charters and I mean, everywhere.
All the way across.
It's,
It's interesting.
And the government code, it's the city manager.
We
It's
understand
always the city
why.
manager.
You understand why, I mean, hey, see,
Oh, my goodness.
I think the continuity issue is important.
all employees of the city, with very few exceptions, are hired by the city manager,
Judges.
except for the judge, clerk, except for the judge, the city attorney, the city secretary,
City auditor.
the prosecutor, and the other. So even if the director of public works hires somebody, it's technically, it's technically as a delegated authority of the city manager. There's nothing wrong with saying city manager, it's what the city manager
It's in
says.
every other city.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask everybody to, like, just take a nice deep breath, and I'm gonna ask you to all make a decision about how you feel about it, and then we can come back if we need to discuss it more. Is that okay? Okay. Lee? Okay. Mary?
I think it should be the city
No, it's
manager.
still-
Okay, Mary is the city manager.
I don't think it should be the judge. I think the clerk should be an employee of the city of Rowlett, and we don't want to be changing the clerk every time we change the judge.
I think
I want to
it's
see it as a
excellent.
problem. I don't see it as a
Mr.
problem.
Bolts?
I'm fine with leaving it as it is. I think there was a decision to do that last time it passed. It seems like that's a relationship position to me. And the only way I think I would like to change my mind is if we hear from the city manager as to why he wouldn't want to be that person. Because I think I heard somebody say they don't necessarily want to do that. I'd like to understand why. If that's just him or if that's in general city manager.
We end up with a part-time judge. We don't want a part-time, we're hiring a full-time.
No, exactly.
So right now, we've got a full-time, and I think that's correct.
All right.
You have the judge nominate
City
the city
manager.
manager. So some way to have the judge say, this is what I want, and then kind of require the city manager then to make a consideration of that. It's kind of like.
Okay, we're actually, so right now, we're talking, we're making a decision.
Blue Sky Ryan, we used to call him Blue Sky Ryan.
I get it, believe me, I do.
City manager.
City manager. Kelly, what's your opinion?
Because when the last time we changed it, it made sense at the time. Like I said, they're always paired. It doesn't bother me that it's the judge. It doesn't bother me that it's the manager. And in an effort to be consistent with every other city that's out there. Now that you know that that's what's out there, then the manager's fine with me. I don't really have a strong opinion on it.
Okay,
City manager.
city manager. All right, Lee, I left you for last, except for Deborah. Deborah, you want to weigh in on this?
I contributed to the committee.
I'm sorry?
I contributed to the committee.
Okay.
I'm going with the city manager. However, I want it supervised by the judge. I don't want anybody.
That's always going to happen.
Okay.
Regardless of who appoints, there's always.
Well, I want it somewhere.
Okay.
To state level, we're not going to say if we don't want to.
Okay. Nothing?
Did you get Tamara's input? Okay.
Yeah,
as long as-
Tamara Wood, city manager.
Okay, yeah, as long as it's consistent across all the things, that's what really the issue, that we had disagreement between the ordinance and the charter. But I still want to figure out how to make sure that whoever is appointed, their employment is contingent upon CJIS certification and their employment terminates at a certain period of time that they do not achieve.
Imagine that's like a.
That's like a.
Yeah, but,
description.
yeah.
It's not chartered.
Not in here, because that's going to change.
requirement, yeah.
It's an
I'm looking
operational.
at David when I say.
No, I don't know, it's an operational issue. I mean, the way that it works is that even if we don't have an ordinance that says that, no city that I'm aware of does, although somebody might, but it happens automatically. If they're not seeing 12 line, they're out. Whether we have a regulation on the books that says so or not, it's an automatic thing. That system is guarded really jealously, like anything by the state.
Yeah.
And if we cross that line, oh my gosh.
That was it. We'll talk there. It's not a charge.
Kelly, one other thing.
That was an operational
That's
issue that
not-
went awry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, got it. Oh, that was good.
So the language that's in there in blue, that's the language that's in the ordinance, just for anybody wondering where that came from, I didn't make that up. That's what's in the ordinance to make it.
Okay, so by my count, the consensus of this commission is that we would like to put the city manager back in charge of the municipal court clerk
Higher.
hiring.
Like everybody else.
Maybe the word direct could come out of there.
It sounds like supervision.
Take out
Please.
the word direct.
That's what the ordinance says. And they're conflict, and that's what we're trying to fix on there.
So I can pull up the previous charter version to see what it said. I can't do it here.
Yeah.
But at my desk, I can pull it up.
Okay, so how is everybody comfortable with the decisions we've made tonight, or is there any other comment that you'd like to get on the record? All right, awesome. Great job, guys. Well,
Is there, did we have to stick with just those items that we were told to check off? Or are there other areas that we could possibly look at, or is that too late to look at?
I don't feel like we have sufficient time to
Okay,
actually look into other areas. However, if that is something that we want to do, we have not been forbidden to do that. So if there's something else that you would like to consider, I mean, I have a few things I'd like to consider, but I don't know that between now and the first week of January, we have time to actually do that. And I don't know that it will be another 2 years before a Charter Review Commission can meet again per the law. But if there is something you feel like that cannot wait 2 years, then go ahead and speak now and we'll have people look into it.
maybe I'll just annoy the city manager, how's that? Or David.
That works.
I do it all the time.
He's
Or
getting
you.
good at it. He's getting good at it, too.
Yeah, there were a couple of things I wanted, but next time. Because this needed to get completed.
I think that when we were looking, we all were looking at other cities, there was things that kind of stood out to me. I'm a big budget person, and I want to know where the money's going. And so maybe next time I can be on the charter committee again. And I'll bring up a lot.
So there are things that the council could establish via ordinance. Now, of course, that can be changed by a future council. It's not as binding as a charter provision might be, but if there's something that is recommended by a member of the public, the council. Put it out there, at least for consideration.
As long as it's not different than what the charter says.
Right, as long as it's not in conflict with the charter.
Okay, do I hear a big sigh of relief from everyone? Okay, so now we are going to review the presentation for November 7th public meeting. we had not done a presentation because I didn't know what we were going to be presenting.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to review that.
So it was really just kind of building in there to talk about the presentation for the November 7th meeting. So I think you and Deborah talked about doing a subcommittee and working on that. Now that we have these things, did you want to discuss how you wanted to do that presentation?
I am open to suggestions from you or anybody else because I've never done a public hearing before.
So it's not a public hearing, it's like a town hall, it's just a public input session.
Okay, so I've not done a public input, I've seen them. So you think we should have a PowerPoint and the committee will present the PowerPoint?
Committee or whomever is the spokesperson? However you all decide how you want to present that information. I can do the PowerPoint, y'all can work on a script, how you relay that information, the reasonings and all of that. So this is your opportunity to format that meeting.
Awesome. So is there anybody that would like to be the spokesperson and explain this to the community? I'm good doing it, but if somebody else would be like on fire, oh, I want to do it, I'll let you.
Is that a live feed right there?
I'm sorry?
Is it a live feed or just in person?
It's going to be recorded, so we can post it.
I'm asking because I'm on the set.
It'll be recorded.
Okay. Deborah, do you want to have a speaking role? No. Guys, you were just, okay. So I think I would like to put the presentation together so that I know what I'm supposed to do. I can create it.
Okay.
So Deborah and I, if you want to give me a hand with that, that would be awesome. And where are we going to have it?
Here, it's in the council chambers. And we'll start at 7.
What date is it?
It's Monday the 7th. So we have our CIP meeting at 5:30, and this will start at 7.
Long day, okay. So what does that look like? You're saying we're going to record it. So Elise will get up there and present the PowerPoint, we'll record that.
Just like we're recording our meetings with
Yeah.
the camera. Camera will be set up in the back of the room, so that way it'll capture
Yeah,
the presentation as well as her verbal presentation. And then any questions that come from the audience or comments.
so it'll be live
It's
in a way, really, because whoever attends, we're going to give them an opportunity to ask questions. Is that,
Yes,
Okay.
we'll have public comment.
yeah.
And they'll turn in a card or they'll just raise their hand or?
We'll have a card. It'll be just like public input for any of the council meetings. They'll fill out a card, or if you want to have them raise their hand and then they fill out the information afterwards. So someone may come in and not know that they want to speak or have a question. So
Okay.
Or do you control that like you do at the council meetings? Or is there a time limit on that, or they just?
Well, this would be time limits. But it's technically up to the chair as to how that should be done. Whether this be the format and then even the handouts, if there's anything unusual. Or I will announce at the beginning of the meeting, for example, if I were imposing a 5-minute period of time limit on speakers, I'd say that up front. If she wants to do something that you disagree with, you got the opportunity to call a formal meeting around the rules and how you balance and how the commission vote on your objection. If that makes any sense.
but it's not a meeting.
It might also,
I know, but it's still the structure.
it might also help to be just more of a presentation without a Q&A, and then use the back of the room to collect information. Each one of you is back there talking to people. Maybe you have some boards where you do the sticky dot things of which option do you prefer, or which camp do you want to be in, and use that more as the public relation piece, whereas the beginning of the meeting is strictly just, here's what we're proposing to do or what we're looking at, here's who we are, and then it's really just like two things as opposed to, because otherwise you're really having one person monopolize a few minutes of time with their question, and yes, everyone gets to hear the answer, but nobody else gets to ask a question during that time also. So just something to consider as an option.
Let's issue it. To David down the road. So what's the process? The process culminates in the commission goes to a work session with council, presenting results, going through that. And then subsequently, the council is going to have decisions to make about what makes it onto the ballot. Is that point there, is that a public hearing, or is that?
No, it's not public.
Work session.
Yeah, work session.
So the work session in terms of, well, it's like to vote at some point to say, we're having an election. and this is what
So you reach consensus at the work session, and then at a meeting in February, if you choose to send things to the ballot, then you would call this special election.
So I think to Jeff's point, there's still kind of a public hearing kind of phase. People come to work session and talk. And they can also do the same thing once the election is being called. I kind of like that getting a chance to really talk to people rather than just questions. They did that with a number of things, like the Chief of Lineman project. There's a lot of good conversation in the room. You kind of get a sense, because what we're looking for from you guys is to get a sense for what people are thinking. Being aware, of course, that you get 50 people on any one issue until it's time to vote, right? So I think that would be very helpful. Get people really want to get a sense of what people are thinking.
I really like the idea of having it on the boards and people could put a dot or whatever on a board.
And I think like the Herford Park one, they gave people comment sticky notes. They could write a comment on a sticky note and say, what they felt, or, if they agreed but had agreed but, or disagree but.
But sticky notes get short.
Yeah, that'd be short.
Like to the point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do a brief presentation, and then we will have this sort of media in the back, and we will have the other commission people in the back, and after I give my presentation, I can be in the back. And so do we also give them the opportunity, do we say, oh yeah, but you can also do 3 minutes, or just the written sticky notes, or vote here, or whatever? Hello?
Are we required to give them the 3 minutes? I don't know. No.
I mean, you're having the meeting to get public input.
Yeah,
How do you want to get that public input?
yeah. I mean, is it more of a question and answer? Rather than like a written statement, because it's probably questions, I would think.
Well, it's an education process for the community. We're saying, we're here for you, this is what we needed to look at. It doesn't matter why we're looking at it. I mean, it is important, and we know what caused it, but we've all got to be consistent in what we're going to say. We have to be on board with, yep, that's the right word, people. This is why we're doing this. It needs to be changed.
Well, after you get your presentation built, can you send it out to us so we can look at it?
Oh, absolutely. And then, we don't have another meeting before the 7th.
How are we going to get the information out to the people to let them know that we're having that
Yeah.
town hall?
We have
That's
a whole
up to them.
communications team. We have a whole communications team on staff. And if you have social media, you can put it out there as social media. Once they create that posting, I'll share it with everyone.
I think we should, what Drew would do with a 5-minute video, and play it on channel 16. Just have some fun with it. Do it Halloween, wear costumes.
I like it. Let's do that, not worry about anything else.
I think it's really important to get the word out, that really is, because
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm as guilty as anybody over the years, not paying attention because, it wasn't out there, but somehow getting the information out to people, so when they show up, they know what they're voting, and they have a reason why they're voting. I think we have a lot of cases where people are just, oh, I don't know, yes.
And I think that's why it's more of a question and answer, because, this is what we think, and then, it's like, oh, I have a question, what about this, and what about that, and then you kind of figure it out, and they'll give us ideas on maybe how to tweak it, or it's more question and answer.
Well, we had some confusion at last charter election that came after the election. Everybody on the commission understood what the proposed amendments were, and everybody was pretty clear on what we believed the best thing for the charter to say was. The vote was across the board, and inconsistent too, which meant that a lot of people just didn't understand what the charter provisions were intended to accomplish. And there was a whole bunch of tinkering changes in there too that made it even more difficult, and so we had large ballot propositions that were confusing and difficult to read. And no other way to write it, it was the simplest possible way to write it, but and say everything all in one statement. So this time around it's going to be quite different. We're only looking at a couple of proposed changes to the charter, and it will be really simple and short and sweet. The ballot propositions will be really clear and really obvious. And the more word you can get out, the sooner, the better off everyone's going to be. If we had done that last time around, I don't know if it would change the outcome. But I think less people would have been as confused as most of the voters were when they actually voted on the ballot.
So many people say, I voted, was the term limits thing, right? I voted for term limits. No, you voted against them.
Yeah. And the way that it was phrased, it had to be phrased in a specific way to make sense legally, but practically when you read it, it's just, and who's going to sit there and spend all that time trying to draw the little flow charts that you need to draw out to understand exactly what?
Well, I took the commission multiple conversations to figure that one out. And we were knee deep in it.
Oh, yeah. So that you guys know, the city cannot spend public funds in support of or in opposition to a measure on any ballot. We can get the word out as much as we can, and I guess we can use our city facilities.
So is their time considered, they spend their time, is that considered public funds?
It is not.
What about council members?
It is not.
It's voter education.
Voter education.
Yes, we can.
73 cents an hour according to that.
It is I get uncomfortable whenever I see any literature from a city that advocates vote yes kind of thing, or vote no kind of thing. The function is simply to put the word out and to provide information, even if it's couched in terms of appearing to advocate, like we did with the liquor election. We weren't advocating in favor of, but it really kind of was. But it was that made me so nervous. But
you can say, this is what's on the ballot, this is what it means, and we say this is why the commission believed it was important.
yes, and you guys can say on your own time, as a commission member, I'm strongly in favor of this, right? Don't hesitate to do that. It's just that internally, we can't spend money to advocate in favor of or against any ballot proposition.
At the polling, wherever everybody votes, though, can't you post the propositions with what it is?
Sure, oh, absolutely.
It needs to be, because I can go up there and say, well, C, D, E, F, I don't know what the heck they are. Sure.
So, David, I do want to clarify though, you are going to take care of the language of this, and you'll send that to me. So I have that for my presentation, and I can say it.
Either tomorrow or the next day, I'll send an email. I'm going to need help from you with your notes. But I'll send an email out that will contain final work, more or less.
Awesome.
And then you'll circulate it to the balance of the commission members.
So Laura, I want to make sure we don't violate quorum issues. So if I send you the presentation, then you send it out to everybody, then can they send commentary back to you? And then you can send it to me? Okay. Because I don't know if y'all noticed today, but when I said I'll see you all at 5:30, I violated the rule. Oops. So,
Just watch them reply all of it.
I didn't see that. I'm just saying, I didn't see it. You did.
wait, So, okay, so that was the review of the presentations for November 7th, public meeting. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to put on the agenda for either the November 7th public meeting or our next meeting, which is on, it's November something?
I think it was the 14th. I think it's in the minutes, if anybody has the minutes.
I have the 14th, but I believe that's correct.
Okay. So would anybody like anything else on the agenda? Lee, you were saying you do. Does
No.
anybody have anything that they want to add for review? All right. Well,
So we'll have the minutes and review of the public input session.
yes.
Also, then, what's the target for council? December meeting?
No, it's January 3rd. So all this is completed by mid-December.
Okay, so there's still time. So that would be presentation. One of my lessons learned from CIAB was to make sure you had the presentation ready to go back to your board or commission to review that was going to be presented to council. We were on a tight time frame with that one. We never got to do that.
Depending on if there's huge public input, I don't imagine it would be much different than the one.
Right, I would say it would only depend on what the public input was.
So I have December 14th, fine. Have a motion to the city secretary, is that it?
Yeah, that's when that's our wrap up that we will present to council the first of,
And then January 1st, so that, okay.
Say that, sorry, say that, did you say December 14th?
Yeah.
Yes, it's not a meeting.
Oh, it's just
They have
time,
to have
yeah, it's a
everything
deadline,
to meet by
okay,
that.
okay.
But we had discussed having the 11/14th meeting, and if it wasn't finalized, then there's a backup of the 28th, I think was the date.
Yeah.
and then were we going to have a meeting in December at all? No. Are you sure you're comfortable with that?
So,
Throw a party instead.
so, let me ask you, so December 14th is presented to the council?
No,
No, that's when we're supposed to turn everything into Laura
Okay.
so that she can get it prettied up and ready to turn into council for the January 3rd meeting.
Okay. Is there a format that we have to go by? Are we?
it's the staff report for the agenda and the agenda packet.
And if you include any attachments, you might want to have.
So,
Sorry, I should say that would include some staff report, you have a staff report can have supporting documentation go along with that, so if something you want to have added into that, that's your choice.
with every agenda item, there's a staff report.
Okay.
And so that's what we're saying. We have to have our stuff finished for that agenda item on December 14th.
Okay. Okay.
So we have the public input on the 7th, then we have our final full meeting on the 14th. And then if we decide on that meeting, at that meeting, we're not ready, then we'll have a backup meeting on the 28th. And that would be the last meeting we'll have until we go in front of council.
Are we meeting before the town hall on the 7th, November 7th? Are we meeting here before
I would say we did hear it,
gather in the chamber.
but no, we will not have like a meeting like this. It
We just go straight to the chamber meeting.
Yes, ma'am,
We probably want to get there before 7.
probably.
Just so I have some excuse. The 7th and 14th, I'll be sure.
Okay.
And I might make it, but
Well, justice hangs in the balance, so, okay. Anybody else have any other comment? Why? Anything else?
Y'all are doing a great job. For what it's worth.
Thank you.
Jen.
Yeah. Well, it's 7 o'clock, so
My brain.
we're adjourned.